Oh, it's so silent here, Sandy. Everybody was talking and talking, and I think you talked a lot about periods already. And we're going to talk about periods, menstruation, and menstrual cycle here on the stage and later on. So my name is Jurga. I'm from Wash United, and I'm the moderator of this very nice evening event that is taking place 2 days after Menstrual Hygiene Day, or Weltmenstruationstag, that our NGO initiated 9 years ago. And now it's celebrated really worldwide, and it was like an amazing Sunday. So I'm glad that we all meet together 2 days later. And Menstrual Hygiene Day was initiated because we wanted to break the silence around the issue of menstruation, create awareness about the challenges that women and girls face, and other people who menstruate too, so just asterisks when I talk about women and girls, we really mean all people that menstruate. And then really also make advocacy for more investment into the issue. And that's really happening successfully, but still 500 million women and girls lack the needs to manage their menstruation safely, hygienically, and with dignity. And we really want to change that. And I think you all agree that menstruation shouldn't stop women and girls from reaching their potential. And we want to make it a normal fact of life. And in order to do that, they need good access to information, access to adequate products and materials, safe and sound infrastructure for water, sanitation, and disposal, good health services as well, and last but not least, really to break the taboos that the period stigma is gone and we can really talk normal about it. Because periods happen, right? And they happen also at the workplace. So I'm really glad that we're here talking about this today. Because on average, a woman menstruates 5 days a month on the cycle. And at the workplace, she's roughly 22 days. So yes, a period happens at the workplace, not only on the weekends when they're not working. So it's about time to really talk about it. And just to stress 2 important points. So for one, it's not only the 5 days of bleed, but it's also the entire menstrual cycle experiences, being like premenstrual syndrome or being like more powerful. So there's a whole cyclical awareness right now. And secondly, it's really from early on to menopause. Because if you go into perimenopause, again, your experience as a woman might be very different and your needs, again, change. So this is 2 important points I want to make. So yeah, let's talk period. And I briefly share with you the agenda if you don't know yet. So we'll have a foreword by the GIZ, who is also the host of this evening, the Menstrual Action Initiative. And they're able to, through the Menstrual Action, break the awareness, have campaigns, but also really bring together different, groups within the GIZ to also think about menstruation, menstrual health and hygiene. So we have a foreword by Karin Freitag in a minute. She's the Property Management Division from the GIZ, and then followed by a video message by Daniela Spiess. She's working in the Equal Opportunities. She's the Equal Opportunities Commissioner, company-wide and in Ashbourne. And then we're welcoming Laura Amaya. She's associate partner at Dalberg, and she's providing us the global perspective why menstruation matters for women's economic empowerment. And we're really looking forward to that with a special focus on Africa, I guess. Yeah. Then followed, we'll have 4 keynote speakers that I'll then invite to the stage, and they're all providing their perspectives of menstruation at the workplace, either from an NGO perspective, from a company perspective, from a government department perspective, but also from a company/service provider. So you get a really good perspective, rounded 360 perspective on the issue. I'll have some questions for them prepared, but then I invite you all to ask them as well. And we have a mingle as well. If you come up with good questions, I even have a treat for you eventually. It's not a menstruation bracelet, although they're all here. And We're close, before we close for the mingle, Ms. Langenkamp, she's the gender commissioner from GIZ, will share the wrap-up from what we've learned today. So it's going to be hopefully interesting and engaging, and yeah, please take note, and looking forward to start the event with the keynote, with the opening forward by Mrs. Freitag.
Thanks, Ina. Good evening, dear participants. Menstruation must not be a taboo subject. This is how Federal Development Minister Schulze has recently put her tweet. With this short but strong message, I would like to welcome you to our Periods at Work event tonight. My name is Karin Freitag from GIZ Property Management. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the directors of property management divisions. First of all, I would like to thank the Menstrual Action Initiative for addressing this important issue. Our full appreciation for you. The pleasure is on our side to be invited by you as potential implementers of the initiative. I believe there's a lot to learn and discuss about how to establish a period-friendly workplace and how to implement robust results. We are keen to learn from the insights our panelists will share with us tonight. As an internal GIZ service provider, we strive to implement adequate solutions that serve the company and its employees, of course. Creating a period-friendly workplace we owe to the 66% of GIZ employees in Germany who are women. It is actually 60% female staff working in our GIZ offices worldwide. So, menstruation is a fact of life. Dealing with menstruation in a positive way at the workplace has to be further forwarded at GIZ, I believe. And property management is open to engaging in this debate. Wishing you an inspiring discussion tonight and a pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, wonderful. And now we're playing a video message by Daniela Spiess, Equal Opportunity Commissioner. Technology. I have a buffer of two minutes.
GIZ. And it's my pleasure to send you virtual greetings to tonight's event, Periods at Work. Menstruation certainly is a topic relevant to equal opportunities. I therefore very much welcome the Menstrual Action Initiative of GIZ colleagues who have organized tonight's event. Thank you. We need to have an open conversation about this topic to break with any remaining taboos in our private lives as well as in the workplace. We as GIZ Equal Opportunities team held several events on the topic in the last 2 years. Safe space exchanges and an event on cycle-oriented work during the company-wide Health and Wellbeing Day with more than 500 colleagues participating worldwide. Follow-up events are in the planning. Together with the corporate health management, we recently initiated the supply of freely available emergency stock of sanitary pads and tampons at the GIZ's medical services in Eschborn and Bonn and at a central location still to be identified in our Berlin offices. The medical services now also recommends to all GIZ offices abroad to follow this good practice example. Several GIZ offices took the lead and now provide free emergency period products. Particularly helpful for our GIZ colleagues and their personal needs is our corporate agreement on flexible working hours and locations, which enables us to design our working days more individually. In fact, let's shift our focus to menstrual health instead of hygiene, as the term hygiene often perpetuates the stigma that menstruation is something unhygienical and shameful. In truth, the menstrual cycle is not only a natural process, but also the fundamental basis of life itself. In this sense, I wish you all an inspiring event tonight.
Yeah, good to hear. I saw there's already menstrual products here in the toilet down there. I think that was a very spontaneous initiative. But we found a good spot. Anyway, now I really warmly welcome Laura Amaya. As I said, I introduced her before. She's associated partner at Dalberg Advisors, and Dalberg has been commissioned by the GIZ Special Initiative Decent Work for a Just Transition to look at the scalability of the menstrual hygiene sector in the countries of the initiative. So really looking forward to Laura's presentation. You're welcome. Yes.
Thanks, Ina, and thanks, everyone. Great to see everyone here. Great to see a lot of women colleagues, but also a lot of men colleagues. This is fantastic because, as Ina said, women menstruate. People who do not identify as women menstruate, and people who identify as men and do not menstruate also have to face the reality of menstruation on a monthly basis. As Ina said, my name is Laura Amaya. I'm an associate partner at Dalberg, which is a global strategy consulting firm focused on socioeconomic development, and we had the pleasure of working with Alaha Safdari and Nicole Glorian and others across the organization, conducting a study on menstrual health and hygiene and why it is what we call a triple win opportunity. Maybe before I go into the details of the study, a little bit of a personal story, going back to what you were alluding to earlier, which is a couple of years ago, I sit in the global management team at Dalberg, and we had a team of staff, a staff-led initiative, much like Menstrual Action, come up to global management and say, hey, we provide hygiene products in our toilets, we provide soap in our toilets, why don't we provide menstrual health products in our toilets? And they had conducted this very elaborate case for why we should do it as a moral imperative, sort of walking the talk of what we believe in terms of our company's values. They had come up with ideas in terms of productivity, in terms of flexible working hours, in terms of different ways that we can create an inclusive culture. And honestly, I mean, acknowledging that Dalberg is 1,000 people, just under 1,000 people, and GIZ is in the thousands of people, it was a relatively straightforward decision for us to make as a management team. I think the fact that we hadn't provided products in our toilets across our offices around the world was mostly due to omission rather than a deliberate decision not to do it. And so it's very encouraging to see everyone here who is behind this initiative trying to drive change in such a big and impactful organization. So congratulations. Let's get into the study, and I'll give you some context. What we have done is in the context of the Invest for Jobs Special Initiative, we looked into 8 African markets and then did a deep dive in 4 of these markets to identify project opportunities that GIZ could pursue in terms of support with grant and with additional types of support across the countries. What we'll present to you today is a little bit of the highlight of findings in terms of what menstrual health and hygiene means across these countries, but also how it translates to the reality of GIZ across country missions and in Germany. So without further ado, I think I can move the next slide. A little bit shocking. We talked about stigma, we talked about taboo, but I think many of us in the room have had this moment or know of someone who has had this moment. We were hearing just now that GIZ now provides emergency period products in the medical centers, and I think it's exactly to deal with this kind of situation where you're not expecting it and you get your period. But I think menstrual health and hygiene is beyond the taboo. It's beyond saying, hey, I didn't expect this, I need to hide this. It's actually about saying, how do we bring it out in the open and talk about menstruation as a core part of women's health, as a core part of productivity driver, and as a core driver of economic growth and gender equality. So that'll be the framing for today's presentation. Nearly 2 billion women, 1.9 billion women and girls, and I echo the caveat that Ina made, menstruate around the world. That's about a quarter of the global population. And you might be thinking, oh, why is it not half? Well, there is the fact that women start menstruating at some point in their teenage years and stop menstruating at some point later in life. So at any given time, in any given year, there's about a quarter of women that are menstruating worldwide. And if we think about the Invest for Jobs partner countries, which you can see on the screen, there are 86 million of these women. So that's 1 in 4 people again. Adequate menstrual health and hygiene is, of course, access to menstrual products, but it's also about knowledge of menstruation. It's about safe toilets and hand washing facilities, and it's about essential rights for women and girls. However, what we see is that many women and girls across sub-Saharan Africa and other regions, this study focused particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, lack access to adequate menstrual health and hygiene. And you can see in the colors, the darker yellow is where more women lack access, or a greater proportion of women. The lighter color is where fewer women. But even when we think about the women that lack access, in the gray, for example, it's still about 5%, even in developed countries, for example, Germany or the UK, where I'm based. If you look at this chart, we see that you'll see on the bottom axis, the percentage of women that have access to menstrual health and hygiene is higher on the right and lower on the left. And that doesn't seem to have a strong correlation with annual income per capita, right? We see that actually a lot of the countries that our study focused on, which are across Africa and parts of across sub-Saharan and northern Africa, have a lower income per capita, but can have greater access to menstrual health and hygiene through practices like providing period products in schools, at the workplace, and through destigmatizing menstruation. Now we look at Germany, where we're based at the moment. It's relatively high. It's not fully 100%, but it's fairly close. And there's a good number of women and girls that menstruate. The annual income is also fairly high, and so that means that women can afford, quote unquote, the luxury of actually purchasing these products. But why should there be a tax on women because they menstruate to have to spend part of the disposable income on menstrual products? Why shouldn't it be an essential right? Now, there are gaps that prevent the adequate menstrual health and hygiene for women and girls. And our study found that they anchor on 4 different areas, different challenges. The first one is availability. So distribution challenges, the lack of product choice, limited production that is localized or locally available. Then affordability, which essentially talks about high production costs, high VAT, distribution costs, and that's linked to lower income. So in the chart that I was just alluding to before, we see that the higher the income doesn't necessarily correlate with levels of access. Then there's acceptability, and that's the lack of clear quality standards on what constitutes a good and acceptable menstrual hygiene product, and then the challenges enforcing those quality standards. And then there is awareness, what we were hearing about earlier in today's session about cultural stigma, about taboos, about limited education about menstruation and feeling a need to hide menstruation in the workplace and in other settings. So it's really interesting to see that it's a very relevant challenge across these 4 dimensions throughout the 4 countries that we focused on. What is interesting is that a lot of these challenges are still present to a certain extent in more developed economies and in other geographies, as we'll hear a little bit further in the panel. And so it's important to keep in mind both the challenges but the opportunities to address solutions to these challenges. The other really interesting thing that we found is that the number of women and girls is growing around the world as population grows. And so that actually builds momentum in the menstrual hygiene sector to have a sort of market opportunity for companies, an impact imperative for governments, and actually an economic opportunity for economies to deliver on menstrual health and hygiene outcomes to improve outcomes for women and girls across other fronts and outcomes for the broader economy. As I said before, the 4 verticals of challenges also present important opportunities. So around availability, domestic, small and medium enterprises can produce menstrual health and hygiene products, and they can contribute to having greater product variety. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the opportunities that the team is exploring in terms of how to increase access to different types of products. There can be innovative distributors that use a decentralized agent model to deliver products to women in more remote locations. What is really interesting is that there can be innovative distributors that deliver B2B solutions so that products can be delivered door to door, even in markets where distribution channels already exist. And again, we'll hear a little bit about that in the panel in a few minutes. In terms of affordability, VAT reductions have actually happened in several countries, Ethiopia and Rwanda being interesting examples, but we see also that several countries around the world are moving towards reducing VAT, and that's an important driver, and also enables employers to access products at a lower cost for their employees. And then finally, SMEs can employ women to produce reusable pads, which again increases local employment opportunities, but also builds for a more robust basket of products that women have access to. There's acceptability, and again, the study was focused across these countries, these 8 countries in Africa, but there is an issue with quality in that not every menstrual health and hygiene product is formally regulated, be it by national standards or by international standards. And there's been important work that actually Wash United has been supporting through different advocacy channels, and we'll hear a little bit more about that in the panel, to push for international standards across a range of products. And there's a need for advocacy, but there's a need to amplify the urgency of this advocacy. And then finally, in terms of awareness, promoting menstrual health and hygiene in schools, at the workplace, within institutional buildings, healthcare settings, can be an important driver to improve women's ability to manage their menstruation, but also to improve women's ability to be more empowered in work and in their personal life. So, I know I don't have a lot of time, as the clock is telling me here, but there are 3 big things that I talked about earlier where we see an opportunity to advance outcomes by addressing menstrual health and hygiene. The first one is outcomes for women and girls. The second one is outcomes for companies, and I think this is where it's relevant for GIZ from a company perspective. And then the third one is outcomes for governments and for broader society. So to wrap up the presentation, I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of some of the outcomes that could be materialized if we were to advance menstrual health and hygiene. For women and girls, it can improve economic empowerment. Providing workplace solutions to menstrual health and hygiene management has been proven to reduce menstrual hygiene-related absences by up to 89%. So that is menstrual health-related absences in terms of missing work because you have period pain, missing work because you need to run home and get an emergency product when you were surprised by your period, missing work because you actually don't have access or are able to buy the right products to manage your cycle. And so you need to miss work for the entire duration of your cycle. So that feels really important. There's education, of course. And there have been important examples of governments and of private educational institutions providing free menstrual health and hygiene products to students. And this is proven to increase earnings later in life by increasing educational attainment for girls. Scotland was an interesting example recently who made menstrual hygiene products available across all state schools in the country. And there are other countries leading the way on this front. And we'll hear a little bit about those in just a few moments. And then in terms of health, improving menstrual health and hygiene has a direct impact on improving health outcomes for women, particularly in terms of sexual reproductive health and maternal health. And better health, we know, increases female labor force participation by over 20%. So again, an important driver of creating an inclusive workforce and creating better jobs for women and girls, for women and eventually girls. In terms of companies, we saw through our study and through other parts of our work that growing the menstrual hygiene sector can actually generate employment opportunities and returns for companies themselves. Some of the numbers here come from some of the project opportunities that Alaha, Nicole, and team are exploring. But we found that there is a meaningful number of jobs that can actually be created through product manufacturing of menstrual health and hygiene products and through product distribution. And we can hear a little bit more about job creation potential in product distribution because it is a really important driver of economic growth. And then finally, for governments and for societies, there's a really important unrealized opportunity at the moment by improving menstrual health and hygiene. We actually found that in just the 8 Invest for Jobs countries, there could be an increase of 30 billion in gross national income growth by increasing earnings for women if we were to achieve just an additional year of schooling. Now, I'm not going to argue that the only reason women stay in school or leave school is because of menstrual health and hygiene, but there is a clear correlation that has been proven by a number of studies, and so that is a really important economic growth driver. Take another one, 27 billion, again, in gross national income potential growth in just these 8 Invest for Jobs countries alone from reducing workplace-related absences relating to menstrual health and hygiene by just 1 day each month. So that's a pretty significant figure. And we didn't run the numbers for Germany. It'd actually be interesting to do and to do potentially across different GIZ locations. This may be part of the survey that Menstrual Action is running. But it's a really important indicator of the value that we don't realize we're losing every month by not creating inclusive working conditions for women and other people who menstruate to thrive. And then finally, there's the issue of waste and plastic waste. There are a number of innovations aimed at reducing plastic waste from menstrual hygiene products, reusable products, disposable products, traditional quote unquote, with reduced packaging or better materials. But there is an important opportunity to reduce plastic waste if we say, let's focus on the uptake of reusables. Again, probably what we would advocate for through our work at Dalberg is to create a basket of products that women can choose from. I might use a reusable product for part of my cycle, but I might use a disposable product for another part of my cycle. And I think that is the principle of women's economic empowerment and gender equality. It's not about what is the one-size-fits-all solution. It's about how do we create the right conditions for all women and people who menstruate to thrive in the workplace and beyond. A little bit of a deep dive into some of the countries. I won't go into the details, but hopefully you can get a sense of the opportunity in 4 of the countries where GIZ is currently focusing in the Invest for Jobs initiative. But again, I think the key message here is there is an opportunity, there is a moral imperative, and there is a sense of menstrual health and hygiene being a core driver of gender equality going forward. So with that, I think we are moving to a discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for making clear that there's triple wins, and I heard even more wins than free. So we're coming to the next part of today, and I would like to invite our 4 keynote speakers to the stage to take a seat, and then each of you is going to have a 5-minute key input, and then we're going to a Q&A. So first we have Thorsten Kiefer. He's founder and co-founder and CEO of Wash United, basically my boss. Can take a seat. I say hey to Jennie Lann, CEO of Menssäkrad. Hey. Next one is Josepha Niebelschütz. She works in marketing and sales for Oncology at the Bayer AG, and the regions are Africa, MENA, and Middle East, yes, and Africa. So that's why it's really interesting. Welcome, Josepha. And last but not least, we also have a local representative. I'm very glad we could invite. It's Renata Kutinka. She's from the Equal Opportunities Office at the District Administration of Berlin, Pankow. Very welcome. So each of you is going to have 5-minute input, and there's clock ticking. And then afterwards, I also invite Laura back on stage, so we're going into a round of Q&A. Does that sound okay? So let's kick it off with Thorsten.
Know the
the clicker.
The remote
Yeah.
control. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Okay, and so where is my presentation now? That's interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, without the slides, it's going to be a little bit difficult.
And also, so we're asking and use the microphone.
Yeah, I think it's just going to take like a moment. I think it's 20 seconds and we have sorted it out. Let me see. The beginning was really good. And then something else happened.
So just to say, your presentation will be about the global perspective on menstruation at the workplace. Mm-hmm. Correct, Thorsten? Yes. There it is.
Yeah, and here we are, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so just repeating again, and I think like most of the key data Laura has already provided, and I think like adding some key data that we found from research that we did together with Plan International here in Germany, with Carney, a global management consulting firm, and other partners. What we found is that 72% of women report really serious pain and cramps. And half of them report that they have to use painkillers. We also found that 49% of men really don't show much understanding for period-related restrictions and for women not being able to do certain stuff, not wanting to take on certain tasks when on heavy periods. We also find that 79% of men admit to having made a stupid comment here and there, or having not said anything when a friend did it. We also know that 37% of women don't feel really good in social situations when on that period, and that's the data for Germany here now. We know from research that Days for Girls just published around Menstrual Hygiene Day that 8 out of 10 women report that they had the case that they unexpectedly started their period on the job without having access to products. And 96% of those 80% say that they had to leave the workplace to get their products. So just imagine how much time was lost to that, how much valuable work time in the company, and all of that could have been averted by having a Menssäkrad box or somebody from another company in your bathroom. Massive. Then we can ask ourselves the question again, why really should organizations create a peer-friendly workplace? And I think what we always have to look at, there is the moral imperative, what you want to do for your staff, but there's also an economic imperative. And especially in times where everybody is struggling with economic downturn, I think that's becoming more and more important. But what we see is that having a peer-friendly workplace translates into more well-being among employees. It translates into psychological safety. And that translates into increased productivity and staff loyalty. People who feel good at a workplace prefer to go to work rather than work remotely. And they become more loyal to their employer in terms of like staying there and sticking with their employer over years. And one issue that we've heard so much from companies that we talked to, when the calls weren't recorded, was it's really about human resources. Because there is a war going on for top female young talent, for Gen Z, future leaders in your companies that are going to shape whether you're successful or not. And these young leaders, they expect companies to be really serious about gender equality. Not just talk it here and there, but to really walk the talk. And one of the areas where right now you can show that you really mean it is by showing that you have the guts to take on menstruation at the workplace. Right now is still a moment where in Germany, there's not so many who are doing it. Internationally, Google, Apple, Netflix, they already have it. In the US, partners of ours like OnFlow, they have thousands of customers. In Sweden, Menssäkrad, they work with tons of like huge companies. Here in Germany, It's only starting. Here you can still be one of the leaders and not the one in 3 years who also heard the call when all the ships are leaving the harbor. So it's an opportunity to really stand out and distinguish yourself. Also, when we're talking about a period-friendly workplace, we think it's important to look at like 3 different building blocks. One, that's a really obvious one when you think about it. Yes, of course, it's products. Yes, it's period-friendly infrastructure. It's reusable products in the toilets. It is a dustbin that has a lid on it. It ideally is also a cubicle that has water. So somebody who wants to reuse a reusable product can clean it, can change a period panty. Yes, we all understand that. But it's really so important to understand that you cannot leave menstruation in the ladies' bathroom. You have to take it out of there. If you really want to create a company that has a culture of acceptance, of empathy towards female employees, if you want to create an open and respectful dialogue, you have to address the dudes with the beards. You have to get men engaged. You cannot leave it to the women. And that's what we hear left and right when we talk to female leaders. We cannot do this alone. You cannot create a taboo and period and stigma-free environment if you don't get men on board. So it's critical to engage in communication that also takes that picks up men and takes them on the journey. And the third component that is also important is like, how can you include it into your occupational health management? That is betriebliche Gesundheitsmanagement, I think it's in Germany. How can you include it in there? You can do workshops on menopause, you can do capacity building on all kinds of aspects related to menstruation. You can work with partners and then here we're looking at like, what are people that you can work with? So when you want to look at the building blocks, you can go to companies like Menssäkrad, Onflow in the US, a female company in Germany. They offer services that solve the product challenges for you. When you want to talk about communication, come to us, go no further. We help you on doing that. Yeah, I see that. But I started late, so I have a little bit more time. When you want to talk about the betriebliche Gesundheitsmanagement, there is companies like Work That Period or Vision Period that actually have great advisors that can help you on doing workshops and capacity building. And just to show you a couple of examples, this is what your bathroom could look like. Really cool. Much, much better than like the wicker basket that somebody brought from the flea market. This is what the MHD effect is at the global level. So this is why the logical moment for a company to start a conversation is Menstrual Hygiene Day. This is where also the guys with the beards get that, it's now time to talk about it. And this is what it can look like. This is some pictures from Hill & Knowlton, a PR firm here in Germany that have used the menstruation bracelet to get half their company engaged. GIZ has been a champion for that, getting everybody who works there across the world wear the menstruation bracelet and stand for period stigma. In the middle, one of my favorites is Cherry Ventures, a venture capital firm here in Berlin, who have added their voice. And KfW this year also started saying, we want to stand up as colleagues, as staff for the issue. Yep, 2 more faces, Katharina Eckert and Vera Nusso, the founders of Vision Period, Work That Period. Those are the people you could talk to. And to address all the 3 building blocks. Not too bad, huh?
No. Thank you, Thorsten. And Menssäkrad was mentioned now by you a couple of times. So, Jennie, we're really looking forward to learn what Menssäkrad is actually doing, what your experience is, how it all started, and where you're at.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you so much for that introduction and showing our products as well. So, really happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm one of the co-founders of Menssäkrad, and I already got the question, what does Menssäkrad mean? And that's a very relevant question, isn't it? It means sort of like period proof, to be period proofed. And that was actually our original founder, Therese, who sits here in black in the front. She gave the Swedish language this word, period proofing, Menssäkrad, in 2019. Because she has a very wide and broad background in the movement, working a lot in Africa and other countries. And she got back to Sweden, and she always got approached with questions, like, well, here in Sweden we got everything under control, being the most gender equal country in the world. And then she thought, no, we have a lot to do here as well. And we need to help companies, organizations, and the public sector to make this shift in society to become more period-friendly. And that's why she founded this company. And I got on board about a year and a half ago. And now we're running this B2B business. So we're here to represent that part of this very important topic. So we're looking forward to a lot of questions, of course, later on. But what do we do then? Well, we provide companies and organizations and public sector with the opportunity to actually make that tactical change, to put the products, the building block number one, into the bathrooms. So no more stress, no more unease if you get your period when you didn't expect it or you left your protection at home. And we think it's just as essential as toilet paper. And that's something, a phrase that I use quite a lot when I do a lot of customer communications. And then I think, just like you said, Laura, it's not about ignorance. It's just like, wow, we haven't thought about it before. Wow, it's such an important part of the work and environment. And I also spend a lot of time with HR directors, and I usually ask them too, so what are your core values in your organization, in your corporate company? And usually it's like trust, equality or inclusiveness. And then it's like, wow, we really have to do this right now? I'm like, yep, you do. So I think we're really here to make this shift. And since we derive from the movement, we see ourselves as social entrepreneurs. We really do this with our full heart, and we want this shift now. And we can see in Sweden that the lead is taken by the corporate companies, but definitely we have an increase at the moment as well, where a lot of municipalities actually vote for yes to put the products into schools or at the offices as well. So it's actually happening now. So I know that Therese, who's been asking for this change for many, many years, like, yay, finally, it's happening now. We're starting to see an increased interest, and we're here to make that shift happening. And of course, we have a lot of investments into making it as sustainable as possible. I know we get back to that later in the panel as well. We're very happy to be here and share our experiences. And I should also say that today we have about 700 customers. So we have some data. I know you like data, some of you here, how it works, how much is used, and so on. And out of these 700 customers, 80% are from the corporate world and 20% from the public sector. So that's what it looks like today. I think I'll stop there and then look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Jennie. I know we have plenty because the model is so interesting. And now coming to a corporate that actually also already applies menstruation at the workplace. It's Bayer company. And Josepha, you're going to share with us the journey that Bayer took. Just also want to mention that Josepha has also an NGO working in Africa and Mozambique specifically, but we'll maybe talk about this later, but now she's here to talk about Bayer's work to make the workplace period friendly. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for having me here tonight. And actually, I mean, the journey also, as you've been calling it right now, that brought me here today already started 2 years ago. So this was when the head of HR Pharma was actually approaching me and he said, hey, Josepha, couldn't you get together a group of young talents to form a sounding board in order to give us your young and honest view then also on how we are doing in terms of talent attraction, entry, development, and exit. And this is then when we embarked on this journey, so trying to look at what pain points exist, but also what kind of improvement opportunities are there that we could realize fairly quickly. And we actually started by having a look at our pharma vision that says health for all. And of course, this is nice for the outside, but what does it actually mean for us internally as employees? What does health for all mean for us? And this is where we then also identified we are a healthcare company, but still about menstruation, there's not a lot of talk here. Periods are still rather taboo, and then also, I mean, it was said by you, right? It's not that femcare products are yet a standard in companies. And so for us, one of the key pain points that we wanted to tackle was definitely menstrual equity. And we thought, okay, cool. I mean, there's a pretty straightforward, idea how to improve this is by actually providing free organic femcare products to women in need. Now, for a straightforward idea, you would think that the way towards implementation is straightforward. I can tell you it's not always the fact. So I did this like on top of my job in a rather dedicated group of people. And there were so many questions coming up. And maybe just put this in a perspective for you. If you look at the Berlin site, it's 5,000 people working there, and we have roughly 400 toilets. So already from a logistical question, right? Things come up like, where do we actually get it started? Who would finance this? Who would refill all the containers? And we had the big chance to actually get then also the site management Berlin on our side. So they then also helped us to really, think in a pragmatic and yet like with a two-scale mindset since the beginning. So we looked actually at our floor plan and we said, where are we currently remodeling our spaces to become open office spaces? Because this is where people now do not have got a desk anymore, where they can store their products. And so we said, okay, cool, let's kick it off there. And then we had to actually extend the contract with Gegenbauer, which is the big facility management company working here in Germany. And they are now refilling it because we went through different models of having the assistants of the functions working there to refill it. And I think they would have hated us all if we did it. So it's pretty good that we got this, this sorted out differently. And now, aside from all of these logistical questions, I think there were quite some, questions going rather in this area of trust. I think we can touch upon it also later in the panel. Or also, when you look at sustainability, is it that we can say we are sustainable providing single-use products? Yeah, so many questions, many pragmatic answers. But then what I would really like to point out is it's crazy the benefit that you experience. So, there's this question, that could come up. Why is it that we need free products for well-paid employees in a country like Germany? But really, from all the feedback I got, there is no linear correlation whatsoever between what people earn, the money that companies invest, and the mental comfort that you get out of this. So it's really crazy. You look at the results, so many people say they've got reduced levels of stress, they feel a higher sense of belonging, which then increases productivity. So a lot of multiple, triple whatsoever impacts here. And something that is really close to my heart that I would really just like to mention is, since we started this project of actually bringing free products to our workspace, there's so much more open discussion, which obviously helps to break taboos, but it also increases, maybe you can call it something like menstrual empathy, So people start to see, crazy, I didn't think about this before, but having access, continuous one, to products is not even a standard in Germany. What happens in other countries, in the global south, where people just do not have got access? What does it mean for social development? And like having this, debate now going on more and more is really beautiful to see. And linking back to the NGO that I'm having in Mozambique, I think it's also part of this awareness piece why we now actually also got the funding via an internal employee voting competition for our next project that is particularly on the topic of menstrual equity in Mozambique. And so, I think really a cool thing to work on, even though sometimes it's a little bit burdensome in the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you, Josepha. I think also Jennie next to it is like, I could answer some of those questions, but we're going to do this in the Q&A. And last but not least, Renata, we were like, when we thought about like public office, like public spaces where you can get free products, and we're in Berlin, we found that there are two districts here in Berlin that provides free products. And actually Pankow is doing this since early this year, and they're doing this even on a bigger scale. So we're really glad to have the Equal Opportunities Office here to share your experience, how you started, and what also your plans are. And I thought this was really interesting to hear from you. So over to you.
I was also thinking about logistics a lot recently. Thank you for the invite and also for this event. I'm very glad that this topic is like more and more coming into like a public discourse. Also, I think it's very important. And my academic background is actually in the humanities and gender studies, and I'm just like a career changer into public administration. So a lot of things are very like puzzling for me, how things are done in administration, and also how long it takes to like finally finish things. I mean, the whole political decision was made in 2021. And we started like 2 years later to implement the dispenser in the toilets. And it takes like a lot. If you want to implement it next year, maybe start last year. So the whole process was initiated by the Social Democratic Party in 2001. And like Ina said, in January we started to install 65 stainless steel dispensers for free menstrual product from the company Periodically. You probably are familiar with them. And they were installed in like accessible toilet rooms of only the office service buildings of the Pankow district office, because it's also related who's responsible for what kind of buildings, like a huge topic. In the original request, in the political request, it was said that also schools should be like this should be implemented in schools, but they didn't have any budgeting for it planned, because you have to plan it like beforehand. So this is planned for the future. They start next year, and then they will like have approximately 260 dispensers in the schools, which I think is quite important. Yeah, and another reason why it took so long is because in the public administration you have to have like a public, how is it called, Ausschreibung, like tender, yeah, and this takes a very long time. It's like practical things like this. But we were actually very lucky to collaborate with a very young colleague. He was like extremely dedicated also to the project from the facility management, and we are still very happy that we collaborated with him. And he did a very cool thing. He initiated that these period product dispensers are now in the, how's it called? I looked it up. Where was it? Sammelbestellverfahren. Yeah, it's like a collective order purchase procedure. But this is a very cool thing, because it means that if this is like implemented, then all other public districts and offices can just order it directly. They don't have to have like a public tender, and it makes the whole process so much quicker and so much easier. Yeah, and also the libraries are the next, and the VHS, like the Volkshochschulen, they also plan to do this. And these dispensers, they are each equipped with 140 tampons and 50 sanitary pads. Maybe you saw them already. Yeah, and as you mentioned, this is the second district in Berlin, but there are like almost all districts are planning it right now. So it means like 10 out of 12 are trying to implement it right now. So this is like a really cool perspective. Mm-hmm.
Really great to hear that's moving beyond the office. So yeah, a lot of food for thoughts, and you already touched on so many good points each other. So Laura, can you step forward? This is anyway yours, I guess. Okay. And you all have microphones on the table, so you should be able to answer. So I'm kicking off with a few questions. And if you then have more questions to the panelists, please also then raise your hands. As I said, for good questions, I have a treat with me, red colored liquid. A shot. Okay, just saying, a shot. So, but anyway, let's kick it off. I have like a couple of questions, but I like that you first of all stress practice what you preach, practice your values. And I like it was really interesting for an organization like the GIZ. You do so much work on menstrual health and hygiene already in countries, but now you're starting to look also at your company here inside in Eschborn, Berlin, and Bonn probably. And then Bayer has the other way around. So you started at the headquarters, and now you're looking outside. So really very fruitful how those interaction to cover it. So I want to start with some of the work that Thorsten presented, like the different pillars, because yes, we talk a lot about products, but we know it's beyond products. And I wanted to ask all four of you, so like, because you implement this at the workplace, and you're from a B2B perspective. So beyond the products, how has been this taken up in the media? What feedback have you got from female staff, but also from male staff, for example? Can you share some examples?
Yeah, I'll pass it on. Interesting question. I think if I go back to what we were hearing about in terms of Bayer and the feedback from female colleagues, there is certainly a huge sense of belonging, in a sense of we're actually practicing what we preach in our external work, in our internal day-to-day life. Really interestingly, the person, I lead our London office, and the person in our London office that is in charge of ordering the supplies is a man. And he's every month asking, do we have enough period products? Should we ask for more period products? Oh, we finished them. Should we ask for this variety or this other variety? So it's very interesting to see that conversation, not just with this one man, that's an example, but actually, Thorsten, to your point, and the nice graphic that you had that says sort of, guys, does anyone have a pad? How this starts to break the taboos in terms of what people think about when they talk about periods. I think the other reflection for me and for us as a firm at Dalberg in Europe, but also globally, is when you start to think about the need and you focus on what women and other people who menstruate lack, which is adequate menstrual hygiene products, you start unpacking, hearing from both of your experiences, a whole set of other aspects to the way in which we're organized as a company, as a sort of broader structure, as a broader system in society, that you start to think, we're not actually designed in an inclusive way, and we could do a lot more to go further. So hearing you talk about the logistics aspects, it's something you don't think about, but these dispensers need to be resupplied every month or every, half a month. How do you do that? Who does that? What's their role? How do they play a role in breaking the taboos? So actually, when we start from looking at, the menstrual product, the need, you can actually pull up to Thorsten your 3 pillars, which really talk about structural change toward gender equality. So that's some reflections.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because at the beginning there was also like a lot of resistance, and you also mentioned this bad jokes and saying like, oh, then you should also supply a man with shavers, razors for shaving and stuff like that. But in general, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, definitely, and it really started also a conversation. And this was also our hope in our office to normalize it and to start a conversation about it. And it was very interesting because this colleague from facility management, he also told us after a while that he, for the first time, he has 2 daughters, and he for the first time started to talk about the topic with them, and I thought it was so wonderful, because you never should underestimate these symbolic changes which really trickle down to a whole movement in a way. So this was really a positive shift I recognized. And we also, I forgot to mention, we designed these stickers. We put them on the dispensers. Maybe we could just give some to the audience. And we are also trying to raise awareness, and there's a QR code on the sticker to our website, and we are trying to also change the content so that it's can be actualized, and how the discourse is changing, and I think the dispensers are a very good way to start, like a broader movement. Also about we talked about like today, cycle-friendly working and stuff like that, and also maybe paid not maternal leave but menstruational leave. This was also be like a utopia for us. Hope.
I mean, for me, the first reflection point that comes up was one of the key stakeholders that I wanted to win for the project. So I set up, you know, how we do it, an Outlook invite, of course, yeah, with the topic menstrual equity. And so I called him and was like, Frau Niebelschütz, menstrual equity, na, what isn't it? Yeah, so what is this topic of menstrual equity like? And now what is it that you come around with this time, yeah? And so it was really funny because like talking about it, people think, okay, it's about, you know, like products, but really what you're saying, like you're actually giving something in, but then the reaction that you get back, like this, like emotional well-being that comes from it is so much bigger than what you would actually, think it to be, yeah? So I think this was very beautiful to see, and you asked for social media, so I can just refer to one internet article that we did when we launched it, where, you know, we've been describing a little bit where did it actually come from, with whom did we work together, and what is now the plan then also for the pilot. And Cordula, who's a colleague also who was working on the project with me, I mean, you can maybe remember because it was really nice to see all the positive comments coming in, and funnily enough, all of them were like, hey, so true, we do not have got this at this side neither, so when is it coming over there? So like directly having this like pull effect of people wanting to have it at their sides too. And now that we are more established with the entire concept, it's actually also site managers that are now approaching us to ask then with whom do we work together in order to bring it there and extend the scope further. So, yeah, very good feedback so far.
Mm-hmm. And we can disagree, very good feedback as well. And we can also see while we're still in this transition phase before this is really the norm, that all toilets will have the products in there, that a lot of companies and organizations get on board and get the good publicity, get the media, get the press, get the social medias as well, to really boost their employee branding and showing that we are aligned with our values. And we got one customer actually got 65,000 views on the LinkedIn post. So that's like, you know, wow. So only that post alone covered their investment of the cost for a year. I mean, the boost that they got from that. Mm.
As a follow-up question, do companies come to you now, or how do you approach companies? So, what is the majority? They come to you because they have such a cool website and they know they saw this somewhere else? Because it's a huge number that you're serving.
It is. So the majority will come to us. So we work a lot with advocacy as well. Like one example that I know that you like, Thorsten, a lot is that we wrote a debate article and we got 24 leaders, like HR directors, CEOs. For example, the HR director of Volkswagen in Sweden signed that opinion piece to really raise the awareness, and then of course people will come to us. And we also work a lot with the web page and with ads and so on to really push through. But of course we prefer when the customers come to us, but we also need to push to get this message across. But of course when mass media covers this, we can definitely see a boost on our webpage as well. So that's a very efficient way of both raising the awareness and pushing our business.
I like that you already spelled out a vision for all of us here. It should, at one point we shouldn't talk about it because it's just normal. That,
I mean, that's the vision, right?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
the
in a few
vision,
years there won't even be panels about it. It's
exactly.
already there.
So early adopters. You talked a lot about logistics, which I found super fascinating. And maybe going back and Jen, what is the most frequent questions that you get from companies, and or like also like challenges, and how do you respond to them?
Yeah, the most frequently asked question is, what happens if the co-workers take too many? That is really, and I was surprised because I come from the corporate world. I've been a management consultant, project managed, all that, and I was just like, wow, is this really the biggest obstacle we got? How about trust? I mean, do we put the toilet paper, the office supplies? Most companies today, they will provide all co-workers with coffee and fruit. What happens if I take a banana and an apple that day? Woo. So that's really the most commonly asked. And what I usually do then is once again mirror the corporate values. We want self-leadership, we want trust, we want inclusiveness. And then it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense, right? And now we can also see with all these customers that it works. And do you know how much an average menstruating coworker will take? How many products a month do you think someone will use? It's a massive amount, exactly, of 3 products a month. It's less than €1 a month. So that's also really valuable to be able to provide that statistics. And also, like we discussed here before, why not just try it? Run a pilot and see what happens, instead of coming up with all the questions and obstacles before. What happened if, and what about logistics? It's going to be really hard. But hey, we got toilet paper everywhere. We got everything there. Why not just try it and then learn from it? And usually what they find, okay, it wasn't that complicated, and the benefits are massive. And then surprisingly, maybe everyone wants to get aboard too, right? When we prove that it works and it brings a lot of benefits, then okay, let's just do it all over the company.
That's great. Who wants to contribute? I saw Renata just grabbing.
Yeah, it was like the same question with, oh my God, what when the people are taking like all the products. But actually in the original political resolution, there was also this topic of period poverty. So I think it's very cool that our colleague in the facility management, he said like, if the dispensers are empty every day, then they are empty. Then people need the products, obviously. So the staff who's refilling them, they would refill them like every day if someone has the need and take it. Because in our public toilets, we have like very different people with different incomes, obviously. And so if someone comes to the Bezirksamt, to the district office and needs the products, then it's totally fine and totally cool to take them all. So I think it's quite a nice approach against period poverty.
Yeah, and I can just echo what you've just been saying, right? So I won't repeat this piece on the trust, because so we, for example, went for the pragmatic approach of putting stickers on it and just, make people aware, like, hey, please think about your co-workers, like just have a friendly reminder, and really, like, it worked out perfectly. And another question that we then got, particularly coming from the sustainability department, if we can really now provide single-use products, yeah? And then we also went for a pragmatic approach of saying, look, let's get this whole discussion started, because we are living in a bubble, certainly, because I believe we are all pretty much aware of many alternatives that there are to single-use products, but a lot of colleagues, might not be in the same bubbles and might not have this as a daily discussion. Not that I talk about this on a daily basis, but still like on a regular basis. And so let's use this and provide organic single-use products, but to open up the place for discourse on what else is out there in order for us all to become more sustainable in our usage, yeah? And so I believe this is like, where you sometimes have to look at not the direct impact that you're having, but then also the like lagging impact that come from it, maybe like second tier, so to say.
Yeah, just to add, and I know you want to move to other questions, but that's a really interesting point, and a lot of the work we do is with large manufacturers of period products. And their argument often for not going into certain geographies is, well, we don't want to create more waste. But as a company, you're saying, well, I'm providing plastic water bottles for my employees. I'm providing, printer paper for, my teams. Why do we draw the line here instead of on everything else? And I think the approach that you've taken of let's start the conversation and see where that takes us is a really good builder of momentum and of discourse about what could the future look like in terms of menstrual equity.
Right, and you made a point anyway about it's a win for the environment. So if you strive toward there and create the awareness that there's alternative products, I think that became clear. There's sometimes not the awareness what are other alternative products. And then you create so many wins. I want to, Thorsten, yeah, please.
And I think also the point is you're not preventing a female employee from using a product. You're just making it harder. So it does make a difference. And I also just want to reiterate the point. I think the folks of OnFlow in the US did some research, and they actually tried to find out if there was a black market where employers of the clients that they work for were selling the products on the streets. They did not find any evidence. People are not taking more than they need. There's no black market for corporate-free period products.
Good idea.
So I want to turn over to you after you heard the first round of input. What are your burning questions to the panelists or your thoughts around menstruation at the workplace? Maybe also your experience of menstruation at the workplace. Yes. And please, if you want to introduce yourself, where you work, so give some context.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, first of all, for the amazing input and truly empowering. And it's amazing to be in the femtech space and already seeing this these first developments in the sector towards more equity. So I'm Veronica. I just recently joined an amazing femtech startup here in Berlin. What we're doing at Cycleo is basically period pain relief. Via app that is personalized, catered to every menstruating person using the app. And the best part is, it's a corporate benefit, so your employer would pay for it. Here kicks in my question, and I think it's already super interesting what you shared, what your experiences were, where you said, like, for instance, Josepha, I talked to like the main stakeholder who is actually, I think, or I assume, the decider. Like, how do you deal with like potential lashbacks? So basically 2 questions that I have for all of you essentially are, number 1, which key pain points did those deciders that you were talking to and trying to convince in order to get started, let's get this pilot running? So what was like basically their lashback maybe, what were the pain points, and then also how were you dealing with them in order to convince them? Because this is something we are also facing, especially from HR, where they're saying, oh, for instance, this one point of, yeah, what about the male or non-menstruating co-workers? They would then actually say, hey, that's unfair. That's a whole different topic, obviously. But they are kind of afraid of like a lashback and also standing within and their own reputation within the company. So it would be great if you could share a little bit about your experiences, and if you want to, maybe also share a few things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can get it started, but then I think because you're also talking to many different stakeholders from across companies, it would be interesting to you too. But I mean, first of all, I think breathing is important. Yeah. So even though you get maybe a lot of questions that you're always like, okay, let's lean back for a second and see what could be a pragmatic approach to this. Yeah. And then also, I mean, for the key stakeholders, to be honest, for us it wasn't so straightforward. Yeah. So I mean, we worked together between BRG and HR since the beginning, but still for the implementation, actually, one of the key questions, of course, in a corporate is, where does the budget come from? Because it's not that there's one bucket, essentially yes, but there's different like sub-buckets, right? So where does the money actually come from? Because from this then also you can steer the scale of the project, who would refill, etc. And so this is where we've been super lucky actually at the side of Berlin, because we could work together with site management, who said, if we do it, well, we overlook the entirety of the site. So if we start small and it turns out to be something beneficial, we can scale it up, because then we build up the knowledge in the team where then also the central money pot sits. So this first of all, and then yes, really trying to find pragmatic answers to questions, and always go back to, let's get started somewhere, see how it goes, and then move forward. As for example with the trust, let's put up the dispensers in 7 toilets. Let's, do a roughly calculation of what we would need, and then we can still cross-check whether or not the calculation works with what people have taken out, and then we can already downgrade this this piece. Yeah. So it takes time. You need I think people who are a little bit maybe emotional about the topic or enthusiastic, yeah. And for example, I did this on top of my job, yeah. I'm working in oncology now, so this hasn't anything to do with menstrual equity, but you know, like, and then get your team together. I mean, you're outside, but you know, try to maybe also check out LinkedIn and see what are people posting on, and then just write them, yeah. And particularly in a pharmaceutical company, there's so many people open to these topics. I mean, we are also having women's healthcare, so you know, try to like get the door open maybe via people who are already having a smaller barrier to enter.
Any additions, or is that good? So then we go to another question. So we rather offer the opportunity for. Yeah, sure. And then you can pass on the mic.
Thank you, because I worked with Josepha on this project, and I think the moment where we started to be successful, and it was I think a magic moment. We worked with site management, but then the head offered that we work with a female, and then it worked very well because she could better work with the topic. He did not feel so at ease because it was a difficult topic for him, but with her it worked out, and then suddenly everything was solved in a way, and it was very easy. And I think that it's how you need to find your allies and the people that you can talk to, and it can be a man, because some male colleagues might feel at ease as well, but sometimes it's easier for women, so it's something you need to try out when you work on the topic. But that was our magic moment when the story changed and when things suddenly worked out very, very easily.
Yeah, and just because this is actually so interesting, just one sentence, choose your battlefield, right? Because this is then also when we said, well, we actually do not want to do everything at once. This is not really particularly about this project, so we can convince him about the importance maybe later, yeah? Or not the importance, but like, you know, like reduce the barriers to talk about this later, yeah.
I just wanted to add on that stupid question of like, what then about men, isn't that unfair? Shouldn't we get free shavers? I think like, it's just like such a crazy comparison. In German, we often say like comparing apples and pears. I think it's even a complete different ball game. Seriously, my beard doesn't grow unexpectedly overnight. It never surprises me. And if there's a man who's often surprised by his beard here in the room, please stand up. Also, like when you go to the office in the morning and you know, shit, I forgot to shave. The emotional effect of that on your work performance, on your psyche, I think is very different from realizing, shit, my period is coming and I'm bleeding through my pants if I don't get a product in 5 minutes. The effect on your performance for your company, sorry, it's just like completely different ball games. So I think like, I think it's very easy to tell people, you know, that you really just can't compare. One is a fundamental physical function that has very, very concrete repercussions on how you feel and how you can function. And shaving is like, some do it, some don't, right?
Thanks, Thorsten. Yeah, thank you to all of you. I think this is great to hear that something's changing. I think Thorsten and I met 2 years ago, 3 years ago, ever since so much happened in the market. So I'm Elena, I'm from the Institut für Zyklusgesundheit, so Institute for Cycle Health. I'm the founder. We founded this 3 years ago. It's an NGO. We're like doing pro bono work mostly, so it's not a social business yet. But and we have the conference Period of Change once a year, and we decided, I think like a month ago, that we want to go into this topic as well this year. So I'm super excited to be here and to hear all of you speak about it, and to hear also how much is already happening, right? I mean, we've also, I think all of us have seen the other side, like the bullying and the, I don't know, the stupid jokes, and it's still there and it's still out there. And yeah, as I mentioned, like we are on cycle health, so we're going a little bit more also on performance at the workplace, and so we're going basically into that direction. We want to make awareness for that, but also like I think this is like we want to combine all of it. So the question being, where do you, especially the two of you who implemented this, what's your vision? I mean, I think this period product, it's so easy, and already it was so hard to implement, right? And it should be a non-brainer that
on every school, in every public place, and actually every workplace. And I see working or consulting young startups, most of them already have products there, like vegan startups, like all of those, as you said, Berlin hipster bubble. They don't even talk about it, right? Sometimes they have condoms at their workplace. Well, why not? But then if you talk about the more traditional companies, but what's your, so going back to the question, what's your vision? Like, I know there's a huge discussion about the vacation, right? So there, I think, also big cons about that one. So I would be interested in your opinion on that one.
My vision would be also, because we talked about that not only women are menstruating, but my vision would be that it's not such a big topic to discuss, to put it on all toilets, just to make it more accessible also for trans men and for non-binary and agender people who are using the so-called like man toilet. That would be vision. And I have also this hope that through this we could like start more and more awareness about like bodies and gender, and because I think there's a great lack, because sometimes also people say like, oh, women with I mean all women, or for example, and then not all women are menstruating, and you're not automatically like, it's not a correlation in that way. And I think it's a good way to start this Aufklärungsarbeit. Educating people also on like gender topics. This would be a vision for me. And also the other thing I mentioned about like cycle-friendly work procedures that do not force us to be like very social during certain periods of my cycle and stuff like that. And just if it's possible to schedule meetings and stuff like that in a cycle-friendly way, and just to stay home when you are not feeling it. This would be also very nice.
I think what's really nice to see is this like mental spillover effect, if you will. So a little bit like what I tried to say earlier, once you open up the door towards discourse, there's actually more and more topics coming up. As for example, we had also the question, okay, but now what is with non-binary people? And so now the discussion, comes up, okay, but then instead of putting the products in all men's toilets, why don't we have got more gender neutral toilets? Yeah. So going again for the more pragmatic way. And sorry to always say it, but I just really like these solutions, where you can say, okay, with like minimum or minimal effort, what can you actually achieve? Yeah, like looking at the return on investment. And I think also when we look at making our workplaces more peer-proof, etc., I believe like in general, a vision would be that in school already we learn way more about our cycle, because I don't know how it was for you, but I basically got out and, you then like learn via your friends, and then you start to like educate yourself. But that, this is not something that comes by coincidence on how you educate yourself, from what kind of background you're coming and what kind of bubble you are, but that this is really something that we all know about, and that also boys get educated on early on, because like this, there wouldn't be this, what Cordula mentioned before, with which stakeholder do you actually speak about this topic, because it's potentially the first time that a man speaks with a woman about the period, yeah? And so I think this is where my vision would go, that it's just like truly normal, that we do not, as you've been saying, need to sit on these panels anymore.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for all this insights. It's super interesting and great to see that this discussion is getting bigger and bigger. Laura Kiewig, I'm from GIZ, Global Program Sanitation for Millions. We do work on MHM in different countries as well, but my question is more triggering as well, like what you've been talking about, implementing it at Bayer in your company or in different companies in Sweden. And when we then talk about like raising more awareness, maybe increasing this like male allyship regarding this topic, did you have like any accompanying, like, I don't know, company-wide awareness campaigns, or like more like, I don't know, stickers on the man toilets for like, I don't know, information giving or something like this that like really then puts out more this information part on the topic, or was it, or did it so far only go to the provision of the products?
Well, I mean, for us, so again, because it was a project that came on top, so there wasn't, like one big group organizing it, but we did accompanying communication, and this spread then also pretty widely, and the Flurfunk also was helping a lot, yeah, so people started to like talk about it. And now I'm sometimes very surprised, like who comes up to us to ask, like, okay, with which provider do you work? How can we get it elsewhere? So there's this like informal conversation going on a lot. The stickers on the maid toilets, I like that idea a lot. So we might go into that piece. But for so far, yeah, we had articles. We have the stickers too. And we have got like a QR code then also leading to a survey that we then use in order to like re-inform us on how it is going in order to then use it for stakeholder management. So this is the part that we did, but really, like grassrooty a little bit. And then also, but the also on social media, what you've been saying, like this, the piece where we informed about it was also liked, I don't know, 1,000 times or so. So that also had a very big impact. Yeah. But to be honest, like on this communication piece, we could definitely do more. And I mean, also, for example, like next year, I would really love to go with the
Menstrual Hygiene Day.
Menstrual Hygiene Day on the 28th of May. Yeah. So I guess, really leveraging this, because why to reinvent it? If there's a big day like this where you can see other companies are doing it too, there's May allies, etc., then we can just piggyback on it and the impact is potentially bigger.
Couldn't say it better. Jennie, do you want to add something?
What we do sometimes is that we join forces with an NGO that will actually do training as well. Our team is not, we can't do it. They don't have the capacity, but really to bring the topic to the table. And it's an important part of the working environment. So bring it up and discuss it. And we had a CEO that called the other day and he just said that, thank you so much for the products, because it triggered a very important discussion in our management team. I got 2 daughters and I got a wife, but I've never ever thought about the working aspect of periods. So thank you so much, because it's now become a part of our working environment topic that we bring up.
I think there's probably one more thing I'd add, and you mentioned that in your work you focus on sanitation and hygiene and also in menstrual hygiene management. I feel like starting the conversation in the workplace enables companies to think beyond the workplace internally. You talked about the example of the male colleague who started then thinking about it with his daughters. You talked about it as well. If you think about a company like Bayer, other pharmaceutical companies that I've worked with, thinking about periods internally is an enabler to say, hey, could we think about our products in a way that responds to menstrual equity? I mean, to the lady back there in terms of how do we think about menstruation in a holistic way? If, Laura, going back to your point, you're talking about menstruation in the workplace, educational initiatives, communication activities, how can that translate to how can that translate to the work that you're doing externally and be mutually reinforcing internally and externally? So I think there's an opportunity, feel like we're segmenting, what's inside the company and what's outside, but actually bringing a menstrual lens, which is what we were discussing with Alaha and Nicole as part of the concept. With this menstrual lens, you're actually able to be holistic about how you think about your work, irrespective of where it's coming from.
And I think, Laura, that's such a great point about the menstrual lens, because I think what you also want, you want people to be sensitized towards the issue in general. You want parents to potentially go to an Elternabend with, some kind of awareness that there is an issue and start asking these questions wherever they interact with. And then finding out that, maybe here in Germany, we've forgotten to include menstrual health and hygiene education into school curricula. When we did research with Einhorn a few years ago, we found that 80% of teachers in Germany said they needed more contemporary educational materials. We found that less than 20% of people said that their school education on menstruation was good. It's ridiculous. That's why last week we now launched an educational product together with all the cool period startups in Germany, and in less than 2 days, 400 schools and institutions signed up to that. So you need people that have this lens to ask these questions, to bring menstruations into discussions in different areas in their societies, and their workplaces can be one of those places where people actually get sensitized about the issue and start putting on that menstrual lens.
I would, okay, you already had a question. Allah. No, well, like, I also would like to close, so you're doing the last question, and then we're also wrapping up.
Perfect, thank you very much. Allah Hasafdari, my name, I'm the person that Laura is referring to. I have two questions, actually. One's to Renata and to Josepha. First of all, Renata, what is the English name for Sammelbestellverfahren? Did you find out? No, but it's a joke. I was wondering, since you're working for the government and it's tax money that it's paid by our salaries and all the facility, what was the argument, or what did you face, or how did you argue back to the management who are saying, okay, but this is tax money, we can't just spend it for more costs? Yeah, I would like to know that. And then a question to all of them, actually I have 3 questions. How to engage more male colleagues and also to engage male management? You know, like I have great colleagues like Salvador who's supporting this initiative, but how to, I mean, we're trying with Dalberg to find like a rational justification to say, okay, this is important, this is like reducing costs, but how to face that, what your colleague was mentioning, that yes, of course, if you have a female manager in front of you, she immediately connects to you and knows what we are talking about. But this is not reality. Reality is that often decision makers are not female. So how do we engage them? And last question: is this a policy at Bayer that is everywhere in Bayer implemented, or it's just like Bayer Germany? Like, is this in every Bayer worldwide? I don't know where the offices are, or are you starting in Germany and then the plan is to spread out? That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Alain, only because it's you, and one question each. So, Renata, for you was the taxpayer money. Yeah. For Josepha, for you was the in all Bayer office. And who's taking the question about male?
I can do it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, the tax question is answered very easily because we had like this political resolution and it was accepted anonymously, like einstimmig. So this is like, you have to do it. And then later it's just a question how to implement it. And in the beginning there was like, they estimated, the estimated costs are half as high as they thought in advance. So this is also good to know because people think, oh my God, this will be so expensive, but it isn't. And our colleague from facility management also said, if it's like implemented once, no one will ask. No one asked how much toilet paper is used and no one will ask how much period products are used. So just, it's like, I think this beginning, and when you have started it, then it's not so difficult anymore. Just the AfD is like always against it, but it's no surprise.
So no, the answer is no. It's not a Bayer-wide policy, but it really feels like, you know, you're starting a movement and then people start to request it, you know? So at one point in time, you get to this like threshold, I think, where it's just gonna be like over in the, you know, like people talking about it so much and requesting it, that it will be impossible to not do it. I mean, you've also been hearing it before, right? This connection to the labor market. This is just a standard, I think, that will be expected more and more. Yeah. And so I believe it's also going to be more and more standard on our internal policies. Yeah.
Yeah, on your question about like male allies, I think like are convincing males. Of course, you have the economic argument, you have the productivity argument. We talked about those. But I think it's really also important if you want to advocate for the issue to have some male allies on your team. People like Jan, who's taking pictures over there, who also can then engage male decision makers. Because what I've seen so much across my work, that especially if you have your more conservative male decision makers, having a man talk to a man changes the dynamic, because then you end up having this conversation of like, I can talk to a man as us men having it fucked it up for this millennia, you know, and now we need to change something and this is what we have done wrong, versus a conversation where a woman talks to a man and a man ends up getting on the back foot because basically the victim of menstrual inequality talks to the perpetrator. So having men on part of like the activists, the advocates team as allies, I think is super important.
I just would like that one thing. Maybe it's a cultural difference, because I'll be talking on behalf of the Swedish people that we meet. But I find it quite the opposite sometimes. That the man, I mean, you as a man don't have your internal shame. You have it, you know, within yourself. So as soon as I get the information, I understand, okay, working environment, this is a gap that we have. Okay, I can make a decision and make it happen. Because sometimes it also could be some hesitant and think for women, do I want to take the menstrual flag here also? But for a man, it's quite easy to take it as soon as you get that aha moment. I've seen it so many times. And then it seems like the decision circle is a lot shorter. Mm. But it could also be a cultural difference here. I'm prepared to accept that.
Okay, so I hope you had a lot of aha moments and maybe a magic moment for the GIZ tonight. We'll see. We'd like to wrap it up because we still have drinks. You will have time to mingle and you can ask questions bilaterally and discuss periods or women-friendly workplaces in general beyond periods and so on over a drink. But I first want to invite Ms. Langenkamp to do some closing remarks. I know you listened very attentively over the last 1.5 hours. It's hard to sum it up.
Thanks very much. I'm not even attempting to sum it up. It was much too rich a discussion. All the facts and figures are convincing. And I wish, I mean, I'm looking in this room and it's a picture I see very, very, very often when we talk about gender or women's issues. Women, 95%, 99%. I attended the CSW, the Convention on the Status of Women in New York, first in 2004. I didn't know the rules by then, and I didn't know that I wasn't meant to stand up as Germany and speak for Germany, because in the assembly there's one voice for Europe to speak. So not every European state and member state speaks for themselves. And I stood up and said, I believe we have only reached our goal when this room is filled 50-50 with men and women. As long as we talk to ourselves and hear the same thing here today, I would have wished that we have the management here and we had a diverse audience here, because even when I look at the age represented here, it's not as diverse. Karin and I stick out. And I know when I went to school, there was no talk about sexuality or menstrual product. We couldn't think about it. I vividly remember my first period and first using a tampon, and I didn't know how. I was scared it gets stuck and I wouldn't get it out again because nobody talked to me about it. Now I've worked and lived in Africa for more than 16.5 years. I've worked in the countryside. There were no toilets. The toilet was a bush. So no clean water, as we talked about. It's a menstrual health and hygiene product, yes. But it needs more than that. It needs the environment, and that's actually as well the first time I came across it when Jan asked me to talk on a WASH event, talk about it, and I linked it up to say the difference it makes to women being able to participate, to go to school, participate in public and private life. It's a matter of gender equality, and true gender equality providing menstrual health and hygiene products and talking about it. The challenge is, as I said, reaching the broader audience, getting people on board, getting people to talk about it, break the taboo of talking about it. In some countries, in Germany, we can talk about it today, and we talk about it. Not that we are not ashamed, or there are not moments women are ashamed or girls are ashamed about it. No, but we can talk about it, and other countries know. Case of Nepal, where women had to leave the home, go into a menstruation hut, and only come out again after it. So they are locked away. And it's not that it's over. I mean, these practices are still there and we need to be aware of them. So we need to really identify where to start and how to start and with whom to start. Starting talking about it. And here, and I look at Jan and the entire team who've done a really great job in getting influencers on board, who have the ear and the audience of thousands in their countries, to really listen to them and thereby break the taboos, things we as development actors couldn't do the same way. So I really, really like that. What impressed me here today when I looked at these boxes, I felt like great business idea.
Isn't it?
It's great here, and as I said, I've lived in Africa for more than 16.5 years. Great, I don't know who knows the term Juakali, the craftsman under the bright sun. That's basically what it says. It's those people working and making products for the common market, the low budget market. Products like this could be made everywhere around the world. No product we need to export. An easy product that can be produced, we can introduce into a corporate social responsibility activity of any company supporting small upcoming producers and then make a business out of it. So combine the one with the other. And I'm looking at you. I've worked with Bayer in Kenya because I was leading a program on street children and youth. And they, within the corporate social responsibility, were supporting another project there. Imagine there would be a cooperation between embassies, for example, and Bayer as a company supporting within their corporate social responsibility activities, menstruation action, providing Jurkalis with a job, small craftspeople with a job, and supplying starting with the boxes and then training groups and other producers on reusable pads, for example. However, I think there are plenty of ideas that can be explored and should be explored. I as well thought of companies who support the women's empowerment principles. One of the principles is to supply or ensure a healthy working environment to their employees and reach out beyond the company. The discussion here, if that would take place in one of the annual meetings of the Women's Empowerment Principles in New York, very similar composition because it has so much and so rich perspectives. I think it would really make a difference. It can make a difference because that's when you reach the managers making decisions on women's empowerment principles and their company walk the talk. What can we do? So thinking about audiences, different audiences that can be reached. And before I forget, because it happens much, much too often, I would really want to thank the start with the panelists. Great. For everyone, to everybody who has come today. Your applause. Thanks so much, not only for coming, but for what you do and your determination in really pursuing the cause. Thanks to the colleagues, those who are behind the Menstrual Action Initiative and those who have organized the event today. Can you get up? Please make yourself known. Big thank you. It started off small and it is growing fast. We have the commitment and we have used various events in really reaching out to management as well. In the beginning, it was the head of the management board, Tanya Gönner, who said, yes, I support this. Small way, just a personal statement. We had the gender competition and 2 projects supporting menstrual health and hygiene, won prizes or were amongst the best awarded teams for what they did. And we had the state secretary from the ministry and again a managing director wearing the bracelet and very proudly supporting the campaign. It was just 2 days ago that the new chair of the management board supported and raised his voice in support. First time. So we make small steps, but I can as well align and very much feel the same thing you said. A company with 5,000 people, 4,000 toilets, how and where do I start? Public procurement. When I think of GIZ, it was 3 years ago that we developed a practitioner's guide on gender-sensitive event management with some standards. The management said, great, but we don't want a second kind of set of standards. We have already standards on sustainable event management. So can we include it? That's 3 years ago. We haven't succeeded yet. So sometimes, as you say in German, es gibt dicke Bretter zu bohren. It takes a long time to drill through a big kind of wooden plank. But we keep on working on it. And this could be yet another topic where I think we start drilling and we keep on drilling because the movement or the initiative is growing and the supporters are growing. Let's see where we can get. I'm not the manager, I'm not the head of the management board, so I can only add my voice to it, and I'm happy to do so. Once again, thanks so much to you, to everybody who has come today, to the event organizers. And as I said, let's hope we reach the attention and get the attention and support of those who can make the difference, who have the power to make the difference. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for coming. Thank you for Langenkamp for providing also your intro and farewell speeches. Thanks for the board. Thank you for coming. Now let's do...
Can we get a round of applause for that excellent moderation?
Yes. Thank you. My pleasure, my pleasure. So let's now take bigger steps to the drinks. And I think we still want to do a group photo, maybe, or Jan is keen on doing that. And yeah, have a good rest of the evening, everyone.